everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Reading Rainbows. We're still reading Inkheart by Cornelia Funk, and today's chapter is Chapter 9, A Poor Exchange. A strong and bitter book sickness floods one's soul. How ignominious to be strapped to this ponderous mass of paper, print, and dead man's sentiment. Would it not be better, finer, braver to leave the rubbish where it lies and walk out into the world a free, untrammeled, illiterate Superman? And that's by Solomon Eagle. Meggie didn't sleep in her own bed that night. As soon as Eleanor's footsteps had died away, she ran to Mo's room. He hadn't unpacked yet, and his bag stood open beside the bed. Only his books were on the bedside table, and a partly eaten chocolate bar. Shame on him, eating chocolate bar around books. He might get them dirty. Mo loved chocolate. Even the mustiest old chocolate Santa Claus wasn't safe from him. When they talk about it being musty, that makes me think that it's like super old and just... ugh. Meggie broke a square off the bar and put it in her mouth, but it tasted of nothing. Nothing but sadness. Mo's quilt was cold when she crept under it, and the pillow didn't yet smell of him either, only of laundry detergent. Meggie put her hand under the pillow. Yes, there it was. Not a book, a photograph. Meggie drew it out. It was a picture of her mother. Mo always kept it under his pillow. When she was little, she believed that Mo had simply invented a mother for her one day because he thought she'd have liked to have one. He told wonderful stories about her. Did I like her? Meggie always asked. Yes, very much. Where is she? She had to go away when you were just 3. Why? She just had to go away. A long way away? Yes, a very long way. Is she dead? No, I'm sure she isn't. Yeah, this is very mysterious, and it's set up to make you think like Meggie's mom just walked out on the family. Just one day, just up and left. And I don't know. It's sad to think that it's set up this way, because that makes it sound like, I don't know. Makes it sound like Meggie's mom was someone who just didn't care, just one day got fed up and walked away, and yet Mo still loves her type thing. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. Meggie was used to the strange answers Mo gave to many of her questions. By the time she was 10, she no longer believed in a mother made up by Mo. She believed in one who'd simply gone away. These things happen, and as long as Mo was there, she hadn't particularly missed having a mother. But now he was gone, and she was alone with Eleanor and Eleanor's pebbly eyes. She took Mo's sweater out of his bag and buried her face in it. It's the book's fault, she kept thinking. It's all that book's fault. Why didn't he give it to Dustfinger? Sometimes, when you're so sad you don't know what to do, it helps to be angry. But the tears came back again all the same, and Meggie fell asleep with the salty taste of them on her lips. Oh, I hate crying myself to sleep. Poor Meggie. When she woke all of a sudden, her heart pounding and her hair damp with sweat, it all came back to her. The men, Mo's voice, the empty road. I'll go and look for him, thought Meggie. Yes, that's what I'll do. Outside, the sky was just turning red. Not long now, and the sun would rise. It would be better if she was gone before it got really light. Mo's jacket was hanging over the chair under the window, as if he'd only just taken it off. Meggie took his wallet out of it. She'd need the money. Then she crept back to her room and packed a few things. Only the essentials. A change of clothing and a photograph of herself and Mo, so that she could ask people if they'd seen him. Of course, she couldn't take her book box. She thought of hiding it under the bed, but instead she decided to write Eleanor a note. Dear Eleanor, she wrote, although she didn't really think that was the correct way to address an aunt. I have to go and look for my father," she went on. "Don't worry about me." Well, Eleanor wasn't likely to do that anyway. "And please don't tell the police I've gone, or they'll be sure to bring me back. My favorite books are in my box. I'm afraid I can't take them with me. Please look after them. I'll come and get them as soon as I've found my father. Thank you, Meggie. P.S. I know exactly how many books there are in the box." Snarky little brat, isn't she? She crossed out that last sentence. It would only annoy Eleanor, and who knew what she might do with the books then? Sell them, probably. After all, Mo had given them all particularly nice bindings. None of them was bound in leather, because Meggie didn't like to think a calf or a pig losing its skin for her books. Luckily, Mo understood how she felt. Many hundreds of years ago, he had once told Meggie, people made the bindings for particularly valuable books from the skin of unborn calves. Shorta Virginia Nonata, a pretty name for a terrible thing. And those books, Mo had told her, were full of the most wonderful words about love and kindness and mercy. While Meggie was packing her bag, she did her best not to think, because if she did, she knew she'd have to ask herself where she was going to search for Mo. She kept pushing the thought away, but all the same her hands had slowed down, and at last she was standing beside her packed bag, no longer able to ignore the cruel little voice inside her. "Well then, where are you going to look, Meggie?" it whispered. "Are you going to turn left or right when you reach the road? You don't even know that. How far do you think you'll get before the police pick you up? A 12-year-old girl carrying a bag with a wild story about a father who's disappeared and no mother they can take her back to?" It's sad, and yet at the same time, it's true. I mean, yeah, honestly, where does she think she's gonna go? And it would look suspicious, you know, a little girl out just wandering with a bag like that. Meggie put her hands over her ears, but what use was that when the voice was inside her head? She stood like that for quite a long time. Then she shook her head until the voice stopped and dragged her bag out into the corridor. It was heavy, much too heavy. Meggie opened it again and put almost everything back in her room. She kept only a sweater, a book, she had to have at least one, the photo, and Mo's wallet. Now she could carry the bag as far as she had to. She slipped quietly downstairs with the bag in one hand and the note for Eleanor in the other. The morning sunlight was already filtering through the cracks of the shutters, but it was as silent in the big house as if even the books on the shelves were sleeping. Only the sound of quiet snoring came through Eleanor's bedroom door. Meggie really meant to push the note under the door, but it wouldn't fit. She hesitated for a moment, then pressed the door handle down. It was light in Eleanor's bedroom, even though the shutters were closed. The bedside lamp was switched on, so obviously Eleanor had gone to sleep while she was reading. She was lying on her back with her mouth slightly open, snoring at the plaster angel on the ceiling above her, and she was clutching a book to her chest. Meggie recognized it at once. She was beside the bed in an instant. "Where did you get that?" she shouted, tugging the book out of Eleanor's arms, which were heavy with sleep. "That's my father's." Eleanor woke up as suddenly as if Meggie had poured cold water over her face. "You stole it!" cried Meggie, beside herself with rage. "And you brought those men here. Yes, that's what happened. You and that Capricorn are in this together. You had my father taken away, and who knows what you did with poor Dustfinger. You wanted that book from the start. I saw the way you looked at it, like something alive. It's probably worth $1 million, or $2 million, or $3 million. Eleanor was sitting up in bed, staring at the flowers on her nightdress, and not saying a word. She didn't move until Meggie was struggling to get her breath back. "That's certainly an outburst." "Finished?" she asked. "Or are you planning to stand there yelling your head off until you drop dead?" Her voice sounded as brusque as usual, but it had another note in it too, a touch of guilt. "I am going to tell the police," cried Meggie. I'll tell them you stole the book, and they ought to ask you where my father is. I saved you. End this book. Eleanor swung her legs out of bed, went over to the window, and opened the shutters. Oh, yes? And what about Mo? Maggie's voice was rising again. What's going to happen when they realize he gave them the wrong book? It's all your fault if they hurt him. Dustfinger said Capricorn would kill him if he didn't hand over the book. He'll kill him! Eleanor put her head out of the window and took a deep breath. Then she turned around again. What nonsense, she said angrily. You think far too much of what that matchstick eater says, and you've obviously read too many bad adventure stories. Kill your father? Heavens above, he's not a secret agent or anything dangerous like that. He restores old books. It's not exactly a life-threatening profession. I just wanted to take a look at the book in peace. That's the only reason I swapped it. How could I guess those villains would come here in the middle of the night to take your father away along with their precious book? All he told me was that some crazy collector had been badgering him for that book for years. How was I to know that this collector wouldn't shrink from breaking and entering, not to mention kidnapping? Even I wouldn't think up an idea like that. Well, maybe for just 1 or 2 books in the world I might. You're not making things any better, Eleanor. But that's what Dustfinger said. He said Capricorn would kill him. Meggie was clutching the book tightly, as if that were the only way of preventing yet more misfortunes from creeping out of it. It was as if she suddenly remembered Dustfinger's voice again. And the little creatures screeching and struggling, she whispered, would be as sweet as honey to him. What? Who are you talking about now? Eleanor perched on the edge of the bed and made Meggie sit down beside her. You'd better tell me everything you know about this business. Begin at the beginning. Meggie opened the book and leafed through the pages until she found the big N with the animal that looked like Gwen sitting on it. Meggie, I'm talking to you. Eleanor shook her roughly by the shoulders. Who were you talking about just now? Eleanor, can't you follow a simple conversation? Capricorn. Meggie just whispered the name. Danger seemed to cling to it, to every single letter of it. Capricorn, go on. I've heard you mention that name a couple of times before. But who, for goodness sake, is this Capricorn? Meggie closed the book, stroked the binding, and looked at it from all sides. It doesn't give the title on the cover, she murmured. No, not on the cover or inside. Eleanor rose and went to her closet. There are a good many books where you can't find the title right away. After all, it's a relatively modern habit to put it on the cover. When books were still bound so that the spines curved inward, the title might be on the side, if anywhere, but in most cases you found it out only when you opened the book. It wasn't until bookbinders learned to make rounded spines that the title moved to the cover of the book. Yes, I know, said Meggie impatiently, but this isn't an old book. I know what old books look like. Eleanor looked at her ironically. Oh, I apologize. I was forgetting you're a real little expert. But you're right, yes, this book isn't very old. It was published almost exactly 38 years ago. Ridiculously young for a book. She disappeared behind her open closet door. But, of course, it has a title all the same. It's called Inkheart. Title drop. I suspect your father intentionally bound it so that no one could identify it just from looking at the cover. You don't even find the title on the first page, and when you look carefully you see that he's removed it. The title page. Eleanor's nightdress landed on the carpet, and Meggie saw a pair of tights being put on over her bare legs. We have to go to the police again, said Meggie. What for? Eleanor threw a sweater over the closet door. What are you going to tell them? Didn't you notice the way those 2 policemen looked at us last night? Eleanor imitated them. Oh, yes, what was that again, Signora Loredan? Someone broke into your house after you'd been kind enough to switch off the burglar alarm? And then this amazingly cunning burglar stole just one book, although there are books worth millions in your library. And they took this girl's father away after he'd offered to go with them in any case? Yes, very interesting. And it seems that these men are working for a man called Capricorn. Doesn't that mean goat or something? Heavens above, child! Eleanor emerged from behind the closet door. She was wearing an unattractive checked skirt and a caramel-colored sweater that made her look as pale as dough. Everyone living around this lake thinks I'm crazy, and if we go back to the police with this story, then the news that Eleanor Loredan has finally flipped will be all over the place, which just goes to show that a passion for books is extremely unhealthy. You dress like an old granny, said Meggie. Eleanor looked down at herself. Thank you very much, she said, but comments on my appearance are uncalled for. Anyway, I could be your granny, with a little stretch of the imagination. Have you ever been married? No, why would I want to? And could you now kindly stop making personal remarks? Hasn't your father ever taught you that it's bad manners? Meggie didn't reply. She wasn't sure herself why she had asked the question. This book is very valuable, isn't it? She asked. What, Inkheart? Eleanor took it from Meggie's hand, stroked the binding, and then gave it back. I think so, although you won't find a single copy in any of the catalogs or lists of valuable books. But I'm sure that many collectors would offer your father a great deal of money if word got around that he had what may be the only copy. Actually, I found out quite a lot about it, and I believe it's not just a rare book, but a good one, too. I can't give an opinion on that. I scarcely managed a dozen pages last night. When the first fairy appeared, I fell asleep. I never was particularly keen on stories full of fairies and dwarves and all that other stuff. Eleanor went around behind the closet door again, obviously to look at herself in a mirror. Maggie's comment on her clothes seemed to be bothering her after all. Yes, I think it is very valuable, she repeated thoughtfully, although it's almost forgotten now. Hardly anyone seems to remember what it's about. Hardly anyone seems to have read it. You can't even find it in the libraries. But now and then these strange stories about it do crop up. They say it's been forgotten only because all the copies that still existed were stolen. I expect that's nonsense, though it's not just plants and animals that die out, so do books. Quite often, I'm sorry to say. I'm sure you could fill 100 houses like this one to the roof with all the books that have disappeared forever. That is a sad thought. Eleanor closed the closet door again and pinned up her hair with clumsy fingers. As far as I know, the author is still alive, but obviously he's never done anything about getting his book reprinted, which strikes me as odd. I mean, you write a story so that people will read it, don't you? Well, perhaps he doesn't like his own story anymore, or perhaps it just sold so badly that no publisher was willing to bring it out again. How would I know? All the same, I don't think they stole it just because it's valuable, muttered Meggie. You don't? Eleanor laughed out loud. My word, you really are your father's daughter. Mortimer could never imagine people doing something bad for money because money has never meant much to him. Do you have any idea what a book can be worth? Meggie looked at her crossly. Yes, I do, but I still don't think that's the reason. I do, and Sherlock Holmes would think so too. Have you ever read those books, by the way? Wonderful stuff, especially on rainy days. Eleanor slipped on her shoes. She had strangely small feet for such a sturdily built woman. Perhaps there's some kind of secret in it, murmured Meggie, thoughtfully caressing the close-printed pages. You mean something like invisible messages written in lemon juice or a map hidden in one of the pictures showing where to find treasure? Eleanor sounded so sarcastic that Meggie felt like wringing her short neck. Why not? Meggie closed the book again and put it firmly under her arm. Why else would they take Mo, too? The book would have been enough. Eleanor shrugged her shoulders. I know that Meggie thinks that that's a brilliant thought and a brilliant idea, but all I can say is, children's imagination. Of course she can't admit that she never thought of that, Meggie told herself scornfully. She always has to be right. Eleanor looked at Meggie as if she had guessed her thoughts. Listen, I tell you what. Why don't you read it, she said. You really might find something that you don't think belongs in the story. A few extra words here, a couple of unnecessary letters there, and there's your secret message. The signpost pointing to the treasure. Who knows how long it will be before your father comes back? You'll have to do something to pass the time here. Before Meggie could answer that one, Eleanor bent to pick up a piece of paper lying on the carpet beside her bed. It was Meggie's goodbye note. She must have dropped it when she saw the book in Eleanor's arms. "What on earth's this?" asked Eleanor when she had read it, frowning. "You were planning to go and look for your father? Where, for heaven's sake? You're even more foolish than I thought." Meggie pressed Inkheart closer to her. "Who else is going to look for him?" she said. Her lips began to tremble, and there wasn't a thing she could do about it. "Well then, we'll just have to go and look for him together," replied Eleanor, sounding annoyed. "But first, let's give him a chance to come back. Do you think he'll be pleased to get back here only to find you've disappeared, gone looking for him in the big wide world?" Meggie shook her head. Eleanor's carpet was swimming before her eyes. A tear ran down her nose. "Okay, that's all settled then," growled Eleanor, offering Meggie a cotton handkerchief. "Blow your nose and then we'll have breakfast." She wouldn't let Meggie out of the house before she had eaten a roll and swallowed a glass of milk. "Breakfast is the most important meal of the day," she announced, buttering her own third slice of bread. "And what's more, when your father gets back, I don't want you telling him I've been starving you, like the wicked stepmother in the fairy tale, you know." An answer sprang to the tip of Meggie's tongue, but she swallowed it along with the last of her roll and took the book outside. That's the end of that chapter. Yeah, I find it interesting. I mean, yeah. Here's Meggie, planning to run away, and then she discovers that Eleanor's got the book that Capricorn's men had wanted to steal. So, yeah, there's that whole thing of, if they stole it, how do you have it? You must be plotting with them. And then, of course, them sniping at each other, insulting each other. So, families, gotta love them. Anyway, so I thank you for joining me for, chapter 9. And I want to know if you want me to continue doing one chapter a day, Monday through Fridays, or if you'd like me to increase it to 2 chapters a day. I mean, if you want 2 chapters a day, it just means I have to do a little more recording. Not a big deal. So, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of the book so far. And I will see you next time.